Okay, so have you ever wondered who can I trust to make this repair? And now I'm not just talking about when you buy a home, you own a home, and you're just wondering, I don't know, is this person reputable? Do I really need to spend all this money? So I'm gonna tell you a couple of stories today and help you know how to choose the best person for doing work for you. Now, first story is like 15, 16, 17 years old. I don't know, it was a while ago. So I had this home that I was selling for a client. Everything was going great. And then there was like this weird little plumbing thing or whatever. We didn't really know what it was. It was like a slow drain or something. I don't remember. It didn't seem like anything big. So this X, Y, and Z national brand company comes out and they said something about to fix this, we're gonna have to jackhammer the floors and all these things. And basically the starting price was $15,000. My life flashed before my eyes, like trauma zone. Have not even told my seller yet. I'm like, but what do you mean at $15,000? They're like, yeah, we're gonna have to scope this line, do all these things. It's in a basement, so we're jackhammering the slab floors. You're gonna have to replace flooring and do all this stuff. And we don't actually know how far this is going. It could be a lot more expensive. Trauma, right? So because they're a national company and I had this feeling that maybe because of this franchise brand, it was a little more expensive. I was like, can I just call like someone who's reputable, who's been doing this for like 20 plus years, but maybe they're gonna be a little more affordable. So they come out. Now, this plumber we worked with a lot over the years, his name was Mr. Johnny, and Mr. Johnny comes out and he's bebopping in the bathroom and he's testing some stuff and he says, oh, I just need to go get a part. And so I'm like, you know, very nervous over here. And I'm like, okay, Mr. Johnny, how big is this part? And is this the $10,000 part? And he's like, it's not a $10,000 part. Like, I just got to run to Lowe's, grab this thing. It'll be about $65. It'll be good as gold. So I'm like, pause. I would hope that that would be correct. But these people were just here and said $15,000. And here's the scope of what they're going to do. And he says, I can assure you that is not the issue. Let me just get this part and I'll show you how it works. Great. He comes back, does his little plumbing stuff, does the repair, and it works like a champ. To a point that I'm actually nervous because I'm like, what buyer or anybody is gonna believe that somebody quoted $15,000 and then my hoobie-doo guy comes in over here that I recommended and he's like, P.S. by the way, it was $65. They're gonna think like I'm shady, right? So talk to the seller, talk to the buyer and their agent. I'm like, listen, get triple opinions. I don't know, but it seems to be working. What he said made a lot of sense to me. I have no idea why this was so vastly different from the other people, but I just know I'd use this guy a lot. I don't want to stand behind anybody and get sued later if something goes south, but I just need you to know that this has been done. I actually forgot about this before, but they actually had another person come behind him that the other agent knew, and they were like, yeah, everything's working fine. So I'm like, if we're good, we're good, but like, let's move forward. I need you to know that that home has sold 3 more times since then, and every time it comes on the market, I immediately read their remarks. I immediately go to the disclosure to see, has there ever been a plumbing issue in the basement of this home? Never. There never has been one. That was the fix we needed. For $65, and if my sellers had not gotten another pin in, they would have jackhammered the floors, had a $15,000 bill, and you know what? That would not have even fixed the problem. So let me tell you a more recent story. So I have this home on the market. Sadly, it's been under contract 3 times. First 2 times, it was fully inspected. We made some repairs, nothing major. And in the 11th hour, the buyer's financing for both of the times it was under contract, it fell apart. So nothing to do with the house. But of course, that's kind of a bad look, right? Twice under contract, twice it goes back on the market. So the 3rd time an agent calls me and they're like, Tammy, so my client really loves his home, but I need you to level with me. This thing has been on the market for a minute and under contract twice and fell apart. Why? So I tell them the story and I say, well, we have had 2 inspections. We've completed repairs, nothing major. The only thing we ever did do was both inspectors said, hey, the floors have a little bit of a bounce here, and I think you should look under the house or have a structural engineer or someone take a peek at it. Now, just so you know, this home is 75 years old. This is very common. If you build a house today and your floors bounce, probably not a good thing. But back in the day, we used to have our joists for our floor system and they were further apart. So a lot of times these homes set over the years, so you'll come and put some piers in there. So we're only like 5 to 8 feet apart from like a structural component that is supporting weight. So it's very, very common to do. So I tell him the work's already been done. He said, you know, this buyer is friends with a local builder, so we're gonna have a contractor come out and take a look at it first. Fine. So they do. And actually, I find out who it is. It's a reputable builder. They own a construction supply company. Awesome. So he calls me and he's like, great news. We're going to formalize our offer. They came and took a look at it and they said, the work looks awesome. Their exact words were, they did a really excellent job. Fantastic. So we go under contract. The buyer just does a standard home inspection again. Lots of buyers do that. Like I mentioned, the first 2 buyers did their own inspections. This buyer did their home inspection. Now, the previous 2 inspectors used this language. When it came to the floors, it said, hey, might want to have someone take a look at it. Maybe a structural engineer. Could be nothing, could be something. Of course, nothing major, but we did put some piers in there. This buyer's inspector used the language of, you might want to call a foundation specialist. So they did. Foundation specialist comes out and they quote some huge number. Now, what I need you to know is I did not even know the number at the time, but what they said to the agent, or what the agent thought they heard and what the buyer thought they heard, was that the cost for this repair would be more than the cost of the home. And I know they're buying this home for $175,000. I also know this exact company has done work for another client in the past on a larger home and redid the whole foundation of the house for $35,000. So my girl math brain, the math is not mathing, okay? So anyway, I say to the agent as they're telling me this, that of course the client wants to back out, they're telling me this, and I'm like, all right, but I just have to say this out loud. They said that the cost to repair this pretty small foundation is more than $175,000. And he's like, yeah, I was shocked. I couldn't believe it. Now, I do believe that he and the buyer thought they heard that, because I called the company and I was like, listen, I just need to understand the scope of what's going on under this house, because I've not had anyone else tell us that there was anything hugely wrong, and we have to put this back on the market. And the rule in real estate is this: if a seller or an agent doesn't know anything's wrong, we don't have an obligation to disclose what we don't know. You don't know what you don't know. But once you know something is wrong, if you put it back on the market, you have to disclose that. So I'm talking to him and I'm like, I haven't seen a quote, but I've heard what was said and it seems crazy. I was told that you said that the cost to repair this would be more than the cost of the home. And I don't know if you know, but they're buying this for $175,000. He starts laughing and he's like, that is not what I said. What I said was the cost is so expensive that the amount of money they're spending on the home plus the cost for the repair will be more than the home is worth. But even then I'm thinking, he doesn't know this, because I've had this thing under contract before. It is actually appraised for $200,000. So in my girl math brain, I'm like, it's 175. So this tells me that he thinks that there's more than $25,000 worth of work that's needed to this home. So of course I ask him his quote. He tells me it's $60,000. Even still, I'm remembering the whole foundation they did on another home that was larger at $35,000. And I'm like, I don't understand this. So as we're dialoguing, he finally says to me, here's the deal, Tammy. You could call a GC, like a general contractor, and maybe they would make the repairs for $5,000, because they, unlike my company, don't have to put a lifetime guarantee on what the work is that they're doing. My company requires that. So we have to take extra precautions. All right, I'll bite. What are the extra precautions? So he says, he already knows that the moisture readings of this home are not high. That's more information than you need, but there's lots of ways you deal with that. But he said, but they could become high one day because the home sits low to the ground. Now this home has been here for 75 years. If it was going to have a moisture issue, it would have already been showing signs of it. We've done that moisture test inspection 3 times now, never had an issue. But he says, because there's some chance it could become an issue, as in statistically it could be an issue, not that there's evidence of that, we're gonna have to require encapsulation. Then these vent wells, which the home already had, they wanted new ones put in there. There's 13 of them and they're $900 a pop. Then there was their work. Their work actually was not that expensive. It was all the extra work that was just insurance, so they would never have to come back out again, even though they offered that warranty. Now, do I think this company is all bad and they're fraudulent? No, I do not. There are certain times where I think you call a company like this out when the home sits super, super low to the ground and a general contractor couldn't even go under there to put support beams in. Yeah, you might actually be jacking up a house and have to do this if there's a true structural issue. Also, this is bonus advice. For years, structural engineers have been telling my clients this. Just because floors are not totally level in a home, and let me be honest, floors are not level in most homes. Why? Because humans build homes. And I can promise you, if you go to a construction site, you do not see a bunch of people running around with levels all over the house. There are times that they level things, they try to get them straight, but very, very seldom are things exactly level in every room always, okay? But after homes sit on the earth, they do settle. So at the 10-year mark, 25, 50, of course, some settle more than others. There could be a foundation issue, but you've been in grandpa's house before, you could roll a marble, somebody's gonna win a race, it's gonna be a little unlevel. So the question is, do you jack up the house? No, not every time. You might choose to do it because you find out through a structural engineer that there's an issue. But a lot of times a structural engineer will say, hey, this home has been here 50, 75, 100 years. It ain't going anywhere. If you choose to jack it up, you can, but keep in mind, you're gonna create some other issues because now the home is settled. So if all of a sudden you go and jack up the foundation, your walls are gonna crack, They're gonna put pressure on your ceilings. You might put some pressure on the truss system of the roof. So it would be cosmetic, but you could go and create thousands of dollars of cosmetic things you now have to address, or just know it's structurally sound, keep it the way that it is. So I also say that because just because there is a hairline crack or because someone says there could be something wrong with the structure, call your structural engineer. But the real thing I was talking about is like a Mr. Johnny or the guy next door or calling a national franchise company. How do you know who you should trust? Always call at least 2 people. And I recommend if you want to call the national company, not saying you shouldn't, not saying you should, but if you want to call them, they're an easy stop. They're going to come up first when you Google them, and they have a lot of resources. Call them, but then also call someone who has a reputation for having done something for a long time, that it's them and maybe them and a small crew. Now, here's why I say that. A lot of these nationally branded companies, there's a person who's licensed and they oversee people who are trained. People who are trained don't have the same level of qualification as the person who's licensed. Now, they're allowed legally to work under them, but they don't have that same experience. Versus the Mr. Johnnies of the world, who they've been doing it for 20 years. They're the ones that carry the license. So they're gonna look, their eyes are gonna see things in a different way because they've had repetition and experience in something over time. So it's good to have the 2. And if they're vastly different, then you probably need a 3rd opinion. So that's how we work. And also call your agent, call somebody experienced, call a builder, ask them who do they trust, who would they have in their own home to look at something to ensure that they're getting the best repair, but they're also not overpaying. And if you've got an agent, they can help with that as well. Okay, so for more real estate tips and insights on Greenville, Lake Hartwell, and the surrounding area, go ahead and tap the bell, like and subscribe, or you can look below in the description box to get my information and we can set up a Zoom call or a phone call and talk about your real estate experience.